PerfBytes listeners, please take a minute to listen to this word from our sponsor.
We all know if you want better answers, you need better data. After years of supporting old tools and practices, today's testing methods need to be able to optimize modern applications. The flexibility to use tools wherever they best fit, with seamless integration that makes every engineer on your team more valuable and effective. That's where SOSTA comes in. SOSTA's load testing flagship product, Cloud Test, delivers actionable intelligence that lets your performance team drill into live data to pinpoint any performance issue. Leading brands like Nordstrom, Best Buy, DirecTV, SAP, and MSN have all turned to SOSTA to simulate more realistic traffic for load and performance testing for web and mobile apps at any scale, anytime from the cloud. Use predictive analytics to determine whether optimizing your site will provide enough return on investment to justify any suggested changes. Cloud Test gives you complete load testing flexibility from development to production. Let's talk about SOSTA's Impulse. It's the leading real user monitoring technology for better insight into your real users. Impulse allows you to accurately monitor your customer experience and take control of your business results. See how performance affects user behavior in real time so you can optimize in real time. The analytics capabilities found inside of Impulse will astound even the most senior operations engineer and leave your executives drooling for more rich visualizations and data delivery essential to their decisions about global application performance. SOSTA's Cloud Test and Impulse can instantly transform your application performance practices into a world-class operation. Learn more at www.sosta.com.
It's time for PerfBytes.
What the is PerfBytes?
The fourth square meal of the day. Don't bogart the PerfBytes.
Waffles. Microwave ready.
Blah, blah, blah. Add nutritional value to your brain. It's time for PerfBytes with your hosts Mark Tomlinson, James Pulley, and Howard Chorney.
PerfBytes.
Whatever.
Jingle bells, it's PerfBytes time again. Howard, did you want to sing along with me?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay. Bots, yeah.
Bots, yeah.
Exactly.
They're gonna get you.
They're gonna
bots,
get you.
Bots, yeah. They're gonna hose you.
Exactly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of PerfBytes with my good friends James and Howard. And
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Howard.
Hi, James.
Hi, Howard.
Yeah, that's nice. And, it's nice to be on the phone when we're all so relaxed. It's Friday. We're having a good time because, it's still August. And I know somewhere in the not-too-distant future, the three of us are probably going to be in panic mode over what's coming up.
I think the season to be jolly, yet for us melancholy.
That's right. And the season to be anxious and panicked. Isn't that right, James?
Oh, yeah. It's a season full of caffeinated beverages for us. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So we are going to talk, and this is not the first time we've done this. James, we were back in episode 3, I think it was the first time we talked about holiday load testing back in 2012.
I believe we were getting up at 8 a.m. and we had 3 listeners for that show.
3 listeners, and one was your mom. And
yeah.
And then exactly. That was really nice.
Well, then it's good to do a rehash, Mark, because, maybe folks our listeners haven't gone all the way back, so it's kind of fresh for them.
Exactly. And we do have some new tips based on everything we've learned from the News of the Damned, from different customers, from new techniques. So we're going to review that. And everything's going to be awesome. Before we jump too far into it, I do want to remind folks of some events that are coming up. And I know we usually do that at the end of the show, but I want to kind of put it out front here because they're coming up pretty quickly and the registrations are happening. The first one, as usual, is STPCon happening. I think it's the week of October 3rd. And Howard, that's up in your house, right? Near in Framingham.
Yep.
Yeah. So
right up at my neck of the woods. Yeah.
Well, so we'll be up. Well, all 3 of us will be up there doing a live podcast. We're also presenting. James is presenting. I think I'm doing the infuriatingly fun performance puzzlers. That's always a good one. And then there's also a Whopper. And I don't know if we'll be at Whopper, but I want to let everyone know that the Whopper is happening the middle of October. And that's out in Mountain View with our good friends at BlazeMeter. So shout out to Alon and Ophir at BlazeMeter are hosting that with Eric Pregler. And let's see what else. There's we're going to be at Dynatrace Perform, and that's the middle of October. So that's kind of exciting. We'll be there supporting the show and doing also podcasts and interviews and other kinds of fun things. And then after that, I'm going to be at Test Bash New York. Alex Podelko is going to be out at CMG in San Antonio. So there's a heck of a lot coming in this fall. At the same time, most of us are in panic mode around the holidays. So it's going to be kind of a crazy time. If you can come out and join us, that'd be great. Of course, we totally understand if your head's down doing a bunch of testing. So let's jump in. It's 2015, and of course, this is what we all get ready for. As this is our Super Bowl, is really Cyber Monday, Black Friday, and in some companies, it could mean serious business. I mean, serious money when I mean serious business, because in this economy, people are rampant. People are crazy. But James, maybe we should talk a little bit about what we learned. I know we recapped stuff last year in 2014. There were some changes from 2014 that maybe we need to think about now in the new year.
Yeah, so in some respects, IT has given up a little bit. That is, we can't do it all in 1 hour or 1 day.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is they're cooperating better with the marketing department, or the marketing department is informing them more.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's that collaboration thing. It kind of works to both parties' benefits. Yeah. So they're extending the window during which time they have the sales. And you see this in that now, instead of just having things going down on Cyber Monday and then backing into the weekend, Sunday, Monday, or Sunday, Saturday, Friday, last year we had some stuff going down on Thanksgiving Day.
Yep.
And then we had some things actually beginning to creep into Wednesday and Tuesday that were starting to go down. So what it's doing is it's moving the front end of the wave.
Yeah.
It is what it appears to be the case.
Yeah. Now, don't get lazy. Some of you might translate that, and I think in some folks they expected, another 50% or even 100% more load on top in 2014, and it does maybe spread out the load over a longer period of time, but don't get lazy, right? You still want to test for a point load condition in that. I think there's a few other learnings that come from some of the stuff we've studied, and I want to say very recently in the bots episode. It's pretty evident that there seems to be more automation out there than ever before, and it's more specific, or maybe it's more sophisticated automation. The bots are getting smarter. Howard?
And I would say, if you're an e-commerce site, particularly if you're an e-commerce top 200,
yeah,
probably half your traffic.
Could be half your traffic.
Bots.
So
easily.
And it's not just bots. There could be different kinds of scripts. It could be macros that are built into the browser. That's crazy, and it could be. In some cases, we've seen it up to 60, 70% of the load on your site. So getting your strategy together for removing those bots is going to make, if you don't include that in your holiday load estimates, wow, that could take out your site just alone, just doing that.
It's kind of funny. We had a client this week, and they had a bot, what turned out to be a bot attack.
Yeah.
And I truly believe they were actually getting ready to do some e-commerce testing, because I don't think it was really a malicious attack. It was more of some redirects from one company's site to another company's site.
Oh.
So if you have affiliates or partners that you're working with, and you may be bouncing back and forth sites, you need to take that into consideration too.
Yeah, definitely coordinate that for the holiday readiness, because they're probably getting ready for holiday too. And if they go down and everything gets redirected to your site, that could be nasty. Now, it's not just e-commerce. So I know, Howard, you were working with some companies like in the entertainment sector, and we saw some last year that it really wasn't e-commerce, but in a way, I guess it's e-commerce. Like, you're still like news and Netflix subscription, you're still using their service for money, right?
Absolutely. So, and Mark, just think about it. You'll have, Thanksgiving is a family holiday weekend, right? A lot of folks have the day after off, which of course makes Black Friday so much stronger for retailers. But a lot of people are probably hitting Netflix more, or they're streaming on Amazon Prime or HBO Go, or whatever other streaming service they're using. And believe it or not,
Right.
a lot of extra load goes on our streaming sites at this time of year because of that during the holiday season.
Yeah.
And if you're on
Or
Time Warner or some other cable providers, there's been a big switch over the last 12 months to more streaming infrastructure from their traditional broadcast infrastructure over coax to increase bandwidth. So there's a challenge potentially developing there coming the holiday season.
Yeah, so big shout out to Voodoo, because, I'm going to be home watching Voodoo movies. But I may have to use my home Plex server instead if people don't prepare. So, yeah, it's not just e-commerce. You don't just count, we don't do on e-commerce, we're different. You still could have increased holiday traffic when all the kids are shut in the basement on the Xbox.
So I got to say, this one actually delights me.
Yeah.
I'm a cynical bastard, so yeah.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, it takes a lot, but this one makes my heart sing with joy.
I'm singing with joy. I'm
Yes,
singing
so-
with joy.
So
Go ahead,
it's two-
James.
so
Please
it's-
sing with joy.
Yes.
I'm singing with joy.
Go ahead.
So in 2014, people actually began archiving data for their high volume sales weeks and their high volume non-e-commerce weeks as well for analysis. They're pulling the web server logs. They're pulling the app server logs. They're pulling the database traffic profiles. They're actually pulling this information for extended study in the down periods, which is usually in January and February.
Yeah.
So that is fantastic.
We're applauding that.
And James, let's hope that they're also pulling like all of their user monitoring data too, so they can actually see what their traffic was. Point to point.
Absolutely. We hope that there's a way for vendors to archive a snap of the period and for analysis later. I think that would be a fantastic idea. We're just going to take your e-commerce period and snap it and just put it out someplace else where you can go back and look at it for historical
I'll say the
purposes.
prevalence of new technologies that are doing Elasticsearch over your log infrastructure, your Splunks or do-it-yourself Splunks, getting stuff into a real user monitoring, into Dynatrace, into Impulse, or roll your own into Graphite, whatever you're doing, it's fine. It's just the prevalence of that is gone bonkers since 2012. Definitely the adoption in 2014. I see it almost at every customer I talk to now in some way, shape, or form. So if you're not leveraging that analytic data about what the usage profile for holiday, and then get on and do that. The other thing, Howard, I think you brought up, this is a really good point. What if people have never done a failover test?
They could be in mucho trouble, right? Because as we learned on News at the Dam, it was like the last episode or 2 episodes ago. I don't remember the customer. Oh, it was
it was an airline.
Yeah, it was United Airlines. They
And also, the New York Stock Exchange had an infrastructure piece that went out too. Didn't fail.
their whole
they had a logical layer gateway that failed.
Right.
Yeah, it was United. I think they had they lost a single router that brought them to their knees. They couldn't get their flights going or anything. A single point of failure, not a good thing. Need to test for that across your infrastructure, because you can have the best application in the world. You can have all the horsepower and server power you need and all the database power that you need. You can have your CDN set up, and by golly, a router pukes and you're dead in the water.
Yeah. So
And the stock market figured that out as well. One bad software deployment, single point of failure on a gateway going to another exchange, and then boom, they're down for hours.
yeah, exactly. And I think the other things we learn from years past, or specifically 2014, is remembering that you still are going to see increased load. So if you don't regularly test to 2x or 3x load, that's definitely, it may not be the point or specific point load that brings the site down, but just even a long time, because again, we're thinking maybe Cyber Week, longer term traffic, more 2x throughput, 2.5, 3x, 4x throughput over the long haul for that entire 2 to 3 week period, you still could be blowing out log spaces. You still could be having larger ETL processing because you have double or triple or even quadruple the transactions to process in a batch job overnight. If you've never done 2x, 3x, 4x testing on a regular basis, well, we definitely think that even though it doesn't look like point load, sustained higher than normal or even these 2x or 3x loads for multiple weeks could still cause problems because, again, the whole capacity of the system end-to-end could be in jeopardy for sure.
Hey, Mark, you just brought up a really interesting point, and you kind of sparked a candle of thought in my mind here. And with holiday readiness, a lot of folks have sales that kind of start on Thanksgiving Day night, or rather they start like on the 23rd at night or midnight or whatever.
Cabela's was hit by that last year, Thanksgiving Day sales.
Yeah,
Yep,
so
last year.
they'll have a sale, an off-hours sale, and guess what? They forget there's some massive batch jobs running off hours, and all of a sudden you're going to have resource contention there.
Yeah.
Not saying it's going to happen with every site, but this is something you need to prep for and check for, and then if it's going to happen, you need to test for it.
Yeah, and you can imagine someone in the marketing department says, let's do a campaign where the store opens at midnight. And so you got the retail point of sale systems trying to connect to the back end systems, and all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute, this is our normal batch window in the middle of the night.
Exactly the problem.
In the spirit, the holiday spirit, but also in the spirit of listening to our most recent feedback from the PerfBytes listener survey, James, we're going to take a break from our supporting sponsor, LightSquare.
Lightsquare.com is a proud sponsor of PerfBytes. Lightsquare is a unique offering for performance tuning as a service for web architectures. Lightsquare delivers tuning recommendations in under 72 hours without the typical investment in tools, license fees, or consultants, where we do the work up front. With Lightsquare, you only pay based upon the level of improvement. Find out more about Lightsquare's unique pricing model at litesquare.com/pricing.
That's your business. It's a personal decision. Welcome back. We're talking about holiday readiness, and of course, the things that are mostly different over previous years in the performance testing and load testing arena. And I'm going to throw out there to both of you, James and Howard, that I think one of the biggest things I witness, and it's a new thing, relatively new thing for performance, that maybe makes people, they're not as confident, we haven't been doing this long, is the idea of integrating performance testing with continuous release and continuous delivery. Some people may scratch their head and go, well, wait a minute, I'm going to do these special load tests that are not part of the regular release or an automated deployment or automated delivery. And, that we run these little tests, and we've given all great advice. We've done a whole episode on DevOps and continuous delivery. I think one of the biggest tips I have are around doing performance tests in a continuous fashion is that, let's say you're going to have a lot of panic mode maintenance releases come flying out of the CI system. Can your Jenkins and deployment infrastructure, all your hits through Sonar, all your hits through Nexus, all your hits getting sent out and deployed into the field, is all, if you've got Puppet or Chef, or you're deploying things out on Docker, is that infrastructure ready to handle rapid-fire, chaos, random maintenance pushes and fixes? Do you know? Have you ever said, let's do twice as many releases as we normally do through the repro, right? So you might want to do a performance test of the continuous release or continuous delivery system itself.
So Mark, are you advocating a no think time, continuous build and delivery deployment model for everything back to back for, say, 6 hours as a burn-in?
Wouldn't that be nice? But more reasonably, James, honestly, I think some people set a pace. A lot of people still do nightly builds, and it's still continuous, and they're adopting all the new practices. Maybe they get a load test in, every night before people come in the morning. They do a 1 hour kind of run or something. I've seen that. I'm thinking there are some people who almost get to on demand. So small fixes and patches can almost get like side streamed or fast tracked, boom, right into prod and bypass load testing. Well, during the holidays, a lot of those simple fixes that aren't supposed to break anything are going to be very capacity related, load related types of configuration. And that is the worst time to not do a load test.
I would absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, don't you think? I mean, we're going to be pushing maintenance pushes that are fix an index, change a configuration, add more threads, open more connections, exhaust more resources.
And you have an exact model for what actually caused the problem. You can pull the logs, and you can see exactly how many users were on the system and exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
So I think another alternative here, if it isn't feasible, is to make sure you have a really strong, solid review process going on for any change that you're going to put in anyways.
Yeah.
Versus just slapping a change in and say, oh, it's got to go right to prod. At least have some sort of confidence from a review process.
See, I have no problem pushing it right to prod if someone is willing to put their signature on the line that if it breaks prod, that they own the cost to the organization.
What you might do in this, for the continuous shops out there, you might have, a lot of times the load test environment, only small tests are done in the flow for release and automated release. You might start having more hands-on, you're pushing to LT at the same time you're pushing to prod, and you are running all of the larger load tests in parallel. So you might be panicking to get stuff out there, but let's say it's a connections change, or it's a change in the number of threads, or a heap size, or something with garbage collection. Some of those fixes, quote-unquote fixes, may not show up as ugly until it runs for an hour. Well, you know what? You might want to put that into LT and start actually fixing those things in real time. So you might be in parallel with prod. If you really have your game together, maybe you can actually get like a 30-minute extra stress test of everything that would get pushed to prod. You would add 15, 20 minutes to your decision-making process, but see if that's possible. The worst thing to do would just be leave LT completely out of it, because I think you're promoting riskier stuff into prod at this time, at the worst time to do that. I think that's fake. So continuous stuff is you got to really think about the game plan and how many resources can work in parallel and how the process works for release decisions. James, that's a good point as well. What else? Who's the next one here? Well, I can introduce you. So, Howard, what's the other tip you have for folks this year?
Well, how about tuning up our firewall? Have your security team profile the traffic and behavior, looking for odd user agents, geographical origin behaviors, and be prepared to lock those rules down early for testing and then aggressively during your high sales windows.
So, in the CDN, before we talk about the CDN, in the CDN episode, we also talked about firewall a little bit. The idea that, a CDN kind of works like a security barrier. It takes the brunt of the DDoS type attack. Have you ever done a load test of your firewall? Some people haven't. They just assume it's part of the infrastructure, right? They don't.
That is correct. They usually don't do it as part of their performance tests because they're usually behind the firewall for a lot of application performance tests. It's interesting so much of what you can see in the firewall and the firewall logs. Mark, you mentioned the CDN as a possible firewall. A lot of CDNs do have a web application firewall built into them. Yeah. And you can put rules in place in the CDN so it never goes beyond there. Or you can put it in place on your hard firewall, either logical or physical device inside your infrastructure as well.
Cool.
Kind of catching it at two layers.
And of course, with
another thing.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Mark.
I was just going to say, and of course, with everyone that's tuned in early, it's August. You have plenty of time to do a let's test the firewall load test. I mean, come on, these are the early bird gets the worm, Howard.
Well, not only that, but you can see who is on your firewall right now. You can tailor the rules and kind of put them in place and
burn them in,
drive them, and
so,
make
James,
sure they're actually working.
So tailoring the rules is a really, really important thing, okay? Because when you go traverse a firewall, you're not going through the firewall for free. And what I mean by that is firewalls will add lag time into your transaction, all right? Yes. Firewalls are inherently going to add latency because the more rules you have to traverse, the longer it's going to take to traverse those rules. So getting a good understanding of, what you're looking at.
And if you can get some simple, unique characteristics that define a bot, such as, oh, look, it doesn't have any headers related to compression, all browsers say we'll accept compressed traffic.
That's right.
That's a real easy one.
Go back and
Firewalled off.
Yeah, go back and listen to the bots episode. I think the bigger point on the bigger point on the firewall stuff is if you got to decide which things are really important during this holiday window, right? So you may just change up the website so that entire sections that are not that important to your sales, maybe we just turn them off. Maybe we don't. We come back after such and such date. Because if you do something extreme, but a lot of people don't do this in e-commerce, but let's say you've got packet inspection or something crazy going on in there, and if you combine the firewall with your load balancer and the load balancer rules are wrong, boy, now you're really asking for trouble. But the one thing we still see in News of the Damned, James, is that we just did an entire episode on the CDN. But there are some special things for the holiday that you should think about for the CDN, right?
Absolutely. You want to coordinate with your CDN provider because, for a couple of reasons. One, you will be testing them. If you're not going to test them, what do you think is going to fail? Either logically or physically, that communication with your CDN is not going to be as efficient as it could be. And this is an area where we in performance testing are actually quite guilty of not doing efficient testing. That is, we turn off the items related to static content, and we never really test the firewall. So you really do need to engage in some testing. You will need to coordinate with them because you don't want to overdrive a single node on their infrastructure and actually distort performance. And that'll give you a perspective as to how much is actually getting through to your origin servers, what performance realistically will look like to the client, and you'll have confidence that your CDN provider is going to be effective in that space as well. Now, Howard, I believe SOSTA has a really good relationship with Akamai, where you actually put several keys in the header for requests, so they know that it's coming through on a performance testing basis.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, James. And that brings up another good point, right? So when you're obviously going to be testing with I would say you'd be testing with a heavier load this time of year. So what's going to happen if you're testing from cloud-based load generators? You're actually going to exceed the bandwidth that you're allowed by CDN for a single edge server. So it's really important to talk to the vendor and let them know that you're going to be doing this testing so they can turn off the throttling on you. Because guess what? If your results get throttled while you're testing, you've just created a false result.
Yeah, that'd be a false positive because in reality, you will be able to handle much more load, potentially, or you won't know what actually would get sent through the entire system to origin if it gets throttled and your response times go up. The one thing we didn't talk about, I just mentioned it lightly before, was this idea of logs and log space. And again, take a look at log capacity, and if you haven't done some housekeeping on all that stuff in info mode logging, maybe it's time to take just one of your sprints, plenty early, it's August, plenty of time. Take one sprint, take one of your junior developers, get a listing of the top largest log messages. Maybe for the holidays, move them all to debug mode. Just turn them off unless they're totally essential for debugging purposes. I mean, that's why we test, so that you don't have to do that kind of debugging stuff in production.
Now, Mark, we've seen on News of the Dam situations where people run out of log space.
Oh, yeah.
Under high volume, and basically the system crashes. Because usually that log space is on the boot partition as well.
Yeah.
Very difficult to recover from. So look at your error log, particularly for HTTP. If you have a lot of missing resources, find a way to trim them out. And those missing resources could be due to bots requesting stuff that's no longer there.
Sure.
Or simply your developer, it's not cool to go back and put a missing flag for Outer Fredonia for that localized website in the footer. But now you've got 1 billion requests a day from Outer Fredonia for that flag.
Yeah.
So you need to balance it out, cache it in the CDN, firewall it off if it's coming from a bot, or just fix it.
Yep. So, Howard, in the production performance testing world, do people ever call it game day testing?
I've never heard that
heard
expression,
it?
but that's a great that's a great name for it because it is game day
'cause
testing, right?
And it is the one place where if you really are doing game day, the turf is the same, the field's the same, the lighting's the same, the crowd screaming is the same. I mean, it's like the real deal, right? When you're in prod, that's the same infrastructure that you're going to be testing.
And which I've always contended is the best infrastructure to test in anyways, because you don't have to worry about duplicating things in a non-prod environment. Everything's there.
Yeah. I will say, however, one of the greatest challenges that, let's say somebody's listening, they're a CTO or CIO, an IT director, go to your performance testing team and basically make the challenge, I dare you to crash the site. Now, you probably are not going to get permission to do that in prod here in August and September. Something to totally crash a site, you probably almost exclusively need to do it in some kind of test segment. You could still be in prod, but it could be a test version of the site on a different set of hardware and VMs. But
I've done enough protection testing, Mark, where I don't think you have to crash. I don't think you have to crash the site, but you do have to be very in tuned in your monitors.
Yeah.
When you're testing, when you have a full-blown end-to-end test going on throughout the site, exercising several business processes in parallel, your monitors are going to indicate what's going on. So, like, if your search engine's about to puke, you should be getting warnings and know to back off.
And back off the load, yeah. Whereas in the lab, you could just keep going and going. Right?
Yeah, I'm always more. That's easier to do than to convince somebody to let's go crash our prod site.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a good challenge, but in reality, it doesn't really help. You can only go so far in the production environment, whereas in the lab, you could really blow stuff up.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. I've seen people crash by accident. I wasn't moderating the test, I'll say that, but I was on a test or two. And they actually crashed their site, and everyone was happy. Oh, we crashed the site, and I'm going, yeah, you crashed the site with a really very unrealistic workload model. So that's another reason you're really going to watch your monitors and build a proper workload model when you're doing it.
All right, so there's a couple other points we have here. One is if just as you might imagine, you have a load testing tool. Some people have license limitations on their load testing tools. For holiday, you really do want to test bigger load than you're probably used to loading, right? So one idea we've given out as advice in the past was augment your either, let's say it's cloud testing, if you're doing load runner, if you're doing commercial-based tools that take license fees, you can either lease some licenses, get some extra licenses for the holidays. You could augment the tool with open source tools, and like we even see Load Runner and Cloud Test have integrations with, say, JMeter. You can call stuff up like Grindr or Gatling. You can do some of that as well. Maybe you have a subscription-based service, right? So you can actually have stuff, buying those. There'll be holiday deals like crazy from BlazeMeter, Flood.io are the sponsors of the show, but also you'll see deals coming from SOSTA and other load testing vendors in the cloud.
We can certainly flex up or down with SOSTA. It's easy to do that.
Yeah. But infrastructure-wise, James, one of the ones I see here you brought up was even Xchariot, right? iXchariot? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's iXchariot. It's from Ixia Communication. Yeah. It's a network performance testing tool. We spoke about it or referenced it when we were talking about streaming media, voice over IP, call quality, things of that nature. Something that's being asked for more and more, how do I test a network versus how do I test an application? But what these tools can do, especially in the lab situation, where Shunra can model, say, behavior of an existing network, how much is in use, you can actually use iXchariot to model the actual network response times of application flows independent of the application itself, which is kind of cool. Or you can use it to raise the volume in use on a given network, including how many errors are occurring in the network and things of that nature with the tool. That's actually pretty easy to use.
So, James, it was interesting you mentioned Shunra and Ixia together. When I was at Shunra, we used to do that. We would use Ixia and run it through Shunra.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Just because it might be easier to just look at infrastructure that way.
Absolutely.
I'm going to jump ahead here to two of the ideas that we've shared in the past, which is just good general load testing advice or point load testing advice on how to survive point load. But more specifically in the holidays, it's good for everyone on the performance test team, and maybe your technical product owners, definitely your ops guys, know which resources need to be optimized first. So let's say you're testing the infrastructure for directory lookups, LDAP, or you've got a specific database that's under major contention for holiday load. You need to know whether it's CPU bound, memory bound, storage issues, I/O bound, network bound, and know plan ahead. What's the first resource I'm going to throw at the problem? And because when you're down to the wire and it's panic mode, you got to know, all right, if we just bump the SGA size up in Oracle, will that help? If I actually move that instance onto a larger rack cluster and just throw CPUs at the problem, can I get more nodes in the cloud? Will that help? And it's always good to come up with that plan ahead of time to make use of all of your proactive load testing results and say, we actually have the contingency, plan B and plan C, so that when plan A fails and everything starts to go haywire, we know the first thing to throw at the database is memory. The second thing we're going to throw at the web servers is CPU and number of nodes, and maybe there's load balance. You know what I mean? Come up with that proactive plan B, plan C, plan D, based on the resources that you're going to have.
Actually, I think that's an awesome idea, Mark. I mean, I never really thought of it that way, but you're actually contingency planning up front. You have a plan. So what you're saying is have a plan of, okay, we need to add more memory. We need to add more of this if we get into this situation, and actually test the flex up and flex down situation.
Good, complete, robust load testing would not only push the system into an error state, you would already do some remediation and say, we know we ran out of memory, so let's run the test again with twice the memory. Now we know, as a contingency plan for holiday, if you get into a panic firefight, boy, the first thing in my tool belt to pull out is I'm going to memory here, I/O there, number of nodes there, network there. And you may not have to use those things, but Howard, you ever been in the chaos of the SWAT team where there's lots of people just throwing ideas and nobody can make sense of what's going to happen? And, how about this, try that, blah, blah, blah. No locks in SQL. We need more logging. Why didn't we install Splunk? I want Splunk. Someone's always asking for Splunk at the last minute. I don't know why. But in that chaos of the SWAT team firefight, boy, it's nice to have a run book put together that says we already kind of have an idea as to what major resources we're going to need.
Yeah, I'd actually call it a cookbook, but I'm right there with you, Mark. Yeah. So that's why it'd be beautiful is you can actually in the lab start to create some of these situations and then say, okay, we know by doing in the lab we did this, and we know by making this tune, if we run into the situation, it's probably our best bet to try and rectify the problem.
Yeah, James, you were going to say.
Yeah. I was going to pick up on the SWAT team item, Mark. I don't know about you and Howard, but I suspect that you probably know as well as I do where you will be during the holiday high water mark.
I'll be strapped somewhere in a conference room on a conference bridge surrounded by whiteboards with a bunch of people who haven't showered in like 4 days.
To mitigate against that, Mark, I'm putting in a full video infrastructure at my office so I can participate without the aromatic presence.
Perfect.
And if you're on an alcohol-free site, James, you can always have your single malt.
That is true. I can go back and forth between, no, that's not vodka, that's just water.
I think the last thing to cover is just a little bit, just encouraging people, if you're listening to this broadcast right now, you're ahead of schedule for the most part. A lot of people start holiday load testing in July. Those are early achievers. But since you're ahead of schedule and you know you're going to be on a SWAT team, get a schedule together. Figure out who's going to be available around the holidays, who's going to be at a family location, who doesn't have family and they're total losers and they're just going to work in the office. But have the resources ready. Have plenty of pizzas. Have the budget ready to support the people that are working their butts off for you in the middle of the night, sometimes pulling all-nighters. Having a shuttle service to get people home. I mean, you don't want people driving when they're overly caffeinated and exhausted and sleep deprived. So maybe having a shuttle service or you never know. It's those nice things at these points of time that a company can actually go the extra mile and really make a difference for your crazy performance load testing devs. It's all hands, right? Everyone's staying up all night. So think about what you can do ahead of time to make it easier and make it not as painful.
I recommend fiber to everybody's house.
That'll work. Yeah.
There you go.
So we'll take this very important message from the PerfBytes public service announcements.
Greetings, PerfBytes listeners. Mark, James, and Howard would like to introduce you to our good friend, Master Sergeant Performance. Listen up, PerfBiters. Master Sergeant Performance here. Just in case you forgot, we're on the front lines of the battle for better performance. And I want you to pick up your feet and get marching on, soldiers. I'm tired of hearing that you're tired of never having enough time to test. And I'm tired of hearing that you're fed up with always being on the tail end of the SDLC. What's the problem? Did a jackalope just take a giant dump on your performance test plan? Tough luck, Bunky. No more wah, wah, wah. No more, we don't have time for this, or I don't have time for that. Stop being a mamby-pamby. Time to suck it up and become a real live performance engineer. You are the commander of your testing destiny, so take charge and start leading. Ever hear of CIU, softy? That's right, Bunky. C frickin' I, continuous integration. Take the lead. Work with your development partners. Spend some time on writing a real SOA suite. Kick it off from Jenkins and attack your code at the services level. And another thing, get to work with your partners in Dev Company on some real code review tools that will actually find issues before you test. In the Performance Army, we call that static analysis. Know it, live it, make it your new best friend. Show them you're just not another old run-of-the-mill performance tester. Show them you can add value way upstream in the SDLC. Heck, maybe you'll even get invited to some of those awesome parties you always get excluded from. You know, the officers make a mean cocktail at all of those requirements review meetings. So if you expect to storm the beaches and release land and kick some bottleneck butt with your new buddies in Dev Company, then get cracking on the basic trainings from the PerfBytes crew. And they might be able to help you get your caissons a-marching along. And remember, we at PerfBytes don't want to see you wind up in the stockade. You're all worthless and weak. Now drop and give me 20. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, so just to wrap things up, these are some great tips. Some people might think they're commonsensical, but, the one thing we know about common sense is it's never common, or it's not common enough. But just in fun to reflect on where we've been, James, I wanted you to maybe remember episode 3, the first time in that fall where we talked about holiday, right before...
I think nothing expresses episode 3 better than a haiku.
A haiku. It was the real...
From that episode.
Yeah, the real haiku was about SWAT team performance testing. And I'll just take a minute here. I'll just... a little dramatic. Here is the haiku for SWAT team performance testing.
Website fails to scale. Experts jump on war room bridge. Panic abated.
That was fantastic. Huh?
I'm so moved right now.
Isn't it?
Yes.
It's culturally so apt, I think.
I might have to leave the mic for a minute.
No, that's fine. Take a breath. Take a deep breath.
My eyes.
That's fine. Yes. So speaking of episode 3, there's lots of other great episodes if you haven't gone back and listened to a bunch of them. But we all thought of a few of that we think might help. And actually, there's one in particular, episode 17, which is how to survive point load. And there's a lot of great tips that James put into that one, I know, which is really marvelous. So episode 17 is really good for those of you that are really expecting major online sales to nail your site. Shout out to Dan Bartow, because he basically has said over and over again, look, the number one thing we see in testing and prod is the load balancer is just whacked. So episode 30, we talked about load balancing. And so if you don't understand how a load balancer works, or you don't even have access to monitor it, you got to get your load balancing. Go back and listen to episode 30. And then, Howard, the two recent ones I think we did, one was streaming performance, because we know it's not just for e-commerce, this holiday stuff. And
as we mentioned earlier.
And all three of us thought definitely bots, because the new thing in 2015, I think we're going to be looking at excessive load from these bots in episode 62. And Howard, what's the last episode that we should recommend?
The CDN.
Exactly. Thank you, Sarge. The
Yeah,
CDN, which is a great recent episode here. Now, no mention of holiday load testing, James, would be complete without the old 100 by 100 rule. So would you please review that technically for the listeners?
So the 100 by 100 rule applies to your shopping cart system, Mark.
Yes.
And it specifically applies to how long you keep your cart in the system, whether it's being used or not used, and how many items are in the cart before you take exception to how you want to convert them.
Yes. So it would be 100 days, no item older than 100 days, and no cart with more than 100. Now, would you revise this? I mentioned in the notes here, it sort of says maybe 50 by 50 would be a little bit more conservative.
I might go a little bit more conservative, do a 50 by 50 rule. If in fact you're only storing information which you're not storing empty carts. Because if you're storing empty carts, well, you just might as well take a drill to your head and open up your checkbook to your storage provider, because you're just injuring yourself in that case.
Oh, but we know from the episodes about how rematerializing a shopping cart with 150,000 items in it is a GC stop the world, stop your business, stop everything.
Exactly. So that's why we set policies for 50 by 50 or 100 by 100. If you get to 50 items in a cart, if someone sticks 50 items in a cart and then they go away and they don't buy them, get your sales intern and inside sales to call that person to see how you can convert them.
Exactly.
Or if they're not going to buy, empty their cart. Get it out of the system.
Put it in an offline log somewhere. So-and-so called, and you could do a sales promotion, offline. You don't have to do it in a cart.
Well, not to get too hard-butted about it, but I remember a certain client that we all worked on that never cleared their cart out.
They're doing much better. They're not even allocating their cart until someone touches it or puts something in it.
Yeah, and that's a shout out to Vamsi Netlove, right? Who actually was one of the discoverers of that interesting anomaly that I'd only seen anecdotally up until that point, and sure enough, he was sitting right there. I forget the synthetic monitoring they had forgot to delete things out of the cart, and it'd been running all year long.
I remember, but I'm going to be too polite to call them out.
Yeah, I think that's fine, not calling them out. I think so. I just come up with a new term. Cart management. It's all about cart management.
Oh yeah. If you allocate too early, you're going to take your system out. The optimal solution is you go to a grocery store, and as you pick a can of goods off the shelf, a manager shows up with a cart for you.
So in closing, for the folks who are getting ahead of the game a little bit, James, what are your closing advice for somebody that's getting started right now, getting ahead of their holiday testing?
My closing advice is to manage that load on the front end with such a known quantity of bots in the universe. Use your firewall rules. Trim out as much of that non-revenue and non-customer load that you can get, because that's like getting free resources back that you're already paying for on your server. So when you do have an exceptional load, instead of competing for 40% of your remaining resource pool, you now have 80%.
Yeah. My advice is just going to be, if you don't even have a plan together, sit down and start having weekly meetings with everyone related to load and performance, database devs, ops guys, network guys, storage guys, front-end folks, the marketing department, and just start having a regular, let's come up with the plan, let's come up with the contingency plans for resources, what do we do in an outage, who's on the call list, and you're early enough now, let's start getting the plan together, because that's a good idea.
And if you own the plan, you
That's
don't
right.
have
Make
to buy
someone
the
else
pizza.
buy the pizza. Howard, what are your thoughts? Maybe getting people to actually start doing some testing in prod if they've never done it?
Yeah, that's a great point, Mark. It's like, absolutely, you're not going to get a better environment to test in than your production environment.
Yeah.
So go for it.
Go for it. Just be
Go for
ballsy.
it.
Get out there. Do it. Well, PerfBytes listeners, put on your holiday hat and get your holiday pipe with a smoking jacket. And we're really glad that you've gotten a jump start on your holiday readiness with us today. And we really appreciate you taking time to listen to the show today.
Hey, as always, I'd like to say thank you to the lovely Mrs. Chorney, and of course, thanks to our listening audience. Without you, we are just eating pancakes in the IHOP in Beaverton. Thanks again, and please tell your friends and colleagues about the show.
Mom, thank you for listening for the last few years.
Yes. Get ready for holidays with James's mom. I will give my usual thanks to the sexy Irish voice of PerfBytes, and also thanks to our supporting sponsor, Sosta, for their sponsorship and support of the PerfBytes show and the PerfBytes community.
Today's show is powered by the sound of tortured voices of users waiting more than 2.5 seconds for a response from your system.
All the content of this PerfBytes episode is 100% copyrighted and protected by... What the heck? What's this service not available 503 error? How am I going to tell everyone who we're protected by? Oh, yeah. All the contents of this PerfBytes episode is 100% copyrighted and protected by a 503 service unavailable error. Don't let this be you. Good luck with your seasonal readiness testing, all.
For more information about PerfBytes, visit the show's website at www.perfbytes.com or follow us on the Twitter, the Tumblr, the Facebook, and of course you can always subscribe and listen to the PerfBytes podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, and testingpodcast.com. Just open your favorite listening app, search for PerfBytes, and click the subscribe button. While you're at it, why not give us a review on iTunes, eh? That'd be nice. And you might not know this, but you can also send us an email at ask@perfbytes.com or even leave us a voicemail at 77-LOAD-PERF. That's 775-623-7373.
And keep those cards and letters, iTunes reviews, email, faxes, and nuclear-tipped cruise missiles coming our way. The PerfBytes listener survey is still open, by the way, and going strong. We'd love to have your input on the specific questions about your podcast listening habits and future direction of the PerfBytes show.
Cruise missiles, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
nuclear-tipped.
the PerfBytes show and staff are supporters of the Practical Performance Analyst, the Performance Engineering Book of Knowledge, Test Bash, and the Ministry of Testing, the Computer Measurement Group, the Workshop on Performance and Reliability, and of course, the Software Test Professionals community of software testers. We hope to see you at the next STPCon conference in October in the Boston area near Howard's house. And of course, join us there for a live PerfBytes episode. Great performance testing workshops and training, and of course, single malt scotch tastings.
Beautiful. By the way, just to recap a little bit, if you're coming to Dynatrace Perform in Orlando in late October, we will be there all week, giving away PerfBytes shoes, interviews, testimonials, doing all sorts of fun stuff to help you, the last-minute holiday performance testers, with advice and get them through to December. You're not in this alone, folks. And remember, there's also Whopper in Mountain View. That's at Blaze Meter in October. Test Bash in New York in November. And the Computer Measurement Group Conference, CMG Conference in San Antonio is also in November. Lots of stuff going on in October and November. Good luck, everyone. Let us know if you need any help, and we'll talk to you on the next PerfBytes.
So saddle up that jackalope and get on down.
Exactly.